My Happy Marriage, Volume 3 Review. This review contains spoilers for Volumes 1 and 2 of My Happy Marriage. Mio Saimori has finally found her place in the world, a place where she can feel safe, warm, and loved, as by Yoko Kudo's side as his fiancé. Having grown up in an abusive family, Mio never thought she would find her place, and she thought that he would toss her out of the to Kodo's potential bride. She would never hear from them again. She could not have been wrong. Not only are they not done with her, but they are angry that she dares to be happy with her betrothed being of a much higher rank and status than her half-sister's fiancé. Now kidnapped, tied by the wrist, and thrown into the storeroom of her old home, she awaits for her sister's and stepmother's judgment. Meanwhile, Kud has heard of Mio capture and is determined to get her back by words or by force. The third volume of My Happy Marriage is the thickest volume so far, at 224 pages. It is because not only does this book conclude the core story arc of Mio versus her abusive family, but it also starts the next chapter in her life, being officially engaged to Kudo and starting their life together. For light novel readers out there, this effectively means that Volume 3 of the manga includes the conclusion of Volume 1 and beginning of Volume 2 of the light novels. This is interesting for manga readers, due to the ending of the first story arc seemingly hinting that we're moving away from the Cinderella-inspired part of the story, and seeing what happens after Happily Ever After per se, are more concretely moving into the supernatural side of the story that has been prepared across the story so far but has not been in the focus. Where you want to continue from this point will be up to you, but for what it's worth, it seems that even though a lot of main side characters so far are written out by the halfway point, there is a lot more story to tell. Obviously, giving away the sad story means going too much into the spoilers, so examine the characters instead and see how they could develop since the beginning. Let's first look at Kudo. So far, we haven't had a deep dive into this background character, aside from a few panels here and there. We know this work and his position as a high authority gifted use for dialogue, but this has never actually been shown. In Volume 3, however, we finally get to see why people call him a demon and one of the most powerful users in the world. And it's very satisfying to see him push back against the despicable people who made Mio's life a living hell. Another thing about Kudo's character that I really like the conclusion of the first arc is how he deals with the family members of Mio's who's kidnapped her. He has the power and status to just charge into their home and tear it apart until he finds his beloved. When he doesn't, he makes a conscious decision to ask the family why they're doing what they're doing, giving them a chance to repent and stand down, to try and avoid confrontation. It's only when they lash out and try to attack him with matching our words, and that lets his power out to rescue Mio. It's a layer that makes Kudo more interesting than just your typical stoic prince archetype. Next we have Mio. The poor girl has been thrown a lot, and the first few chapters of this book put her back into the abusive hands of her sister and her stepmother. But what's different here is that even thrown physically, she's utterly defenseless and goes into survival mode, and she's been doing her whole life, switching up mentally and not fighting back. In her head and heart, however, she has changed. She still has a reason to hold on, so when the family asks her to annul the engagement to Kudo for her sister Kaya to take her place, they believe in Kaya is as far superior. Fit, Mio says no for the very first time, and that it's a big proud moment for her. But even though but the second half of this book, her herd family are now far away from her. Her trauma is still very much in evidence. She struggles with sleep. She still has nightmares of the abuse she was suffering. It begins to affect her daily life. As said in previous reviews, I'm glad that the author didn't take the easy way out and have her trauma suddenly vanish the moment her family did. She needs to work on her thoughts of self-doubt and hatred, which will creep into her daily life as we see her trying to self-improve in noble lady training, and find her own worth outside of Kudo, as well as with him. As express frustration in not seeing much magic being deployed in past volumes in a world that is supposed to be full of powerful gifted families, using the powers to help people but the hero get out of first battle as beware. It does not last long, and I don't think it helps that Rita Kosaka isn't a natural at pacing battles within the panels. Don't get me wrong, the spells themselves look lovely art-wise, but the flow from one spell to another is rather flat and engaging, with no sense of urgency or spell casting shows to display how this world works with magic. Hopefully, this may be rectified in the upcoming anime adaptation or later in the manga, as the next story seems to be hinting at some gifted users coming into play. Speaking of, the next arc seems to be taking a big turn from the sole focus of the romance for now at least, to introduce a structure of their world and what problems are faced with gifted users. And if they mistreat of their own powers, the world building is very interesting and has a lot of story potential too, with the hints increasing that Mio may not be as weak as her family thought she was. But I'll have to see in the next volume. As in previous books, this volume contains an exclusive short story for the original light novel author, this time with a small scene of Mio waking up from a nightmare and being confronted with tea and kind words by Kudo. It's a very small scene, but paints a nice picture of Mio's psyche as the nightmares continue to invade her waking state too. We also have a few pages at the very end of the book, which looks into the various rooms shown in the series and what they look like from a bird's eye view. It is a nice extra to have. It is not something usually shared in a manga. My Happy Marriage continues to be an interesting read, but the move away from the fairy tale inspiration and more into magical political drama may or may not deter a portion of the audience. It'll be interesting to see where the story goes from here. But for now, it's still a fun read and the art continues to be gorgeous. Read a review of this volume on Square Enix's website here. 9 out of 10.